Hi, good afternoon. We're in Crawford, Nebraska today, and we're going to be talking to a good friend of mine, Angie Taylor, who has the darndest tale to tell in an area that is certainly multicultural, I'll tell you. But before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by the Harrison House Hotel in Harrison. Now, some of you have stayed there, some of you haven't even heard of it before, and I want to tell you it's one of the best places in northwest Nebraska to stay. The culture, the history that goes along with the Harrison House Hotel is amazing. Sid and her family have done a remarkable job of remodeling and bringing it right up to speed where you're going to find a lot of comfort and peace of mind when you stay with us there at the Harrison House Hotel in Harrison, Nebraska. Once again, we're back in Crawford, and I want to tell you that Angie, it's been a while since I've seen you. Mm-hmm. I first met Angie when we were a part of the powwow, the committee that was here in Chadron and Crawford, and we did a number of years of powwows together. Mm-hmm. And since then, we've kind of gotten away from one another a little bit, but I wanted to get back with you and let you know here on our story, Never Let the Truth Get in the Way of a Good Story, that Angie has quite a tale to tell in the progress of her people and her family that brings her here to Crawford. And Angie, I'm just going to kind of turn it over to you and let us know how that goes.
Yeah.
How long have you guys been in the area, Angie?
All of my life. 82 years that I know of.
You were telling me before we started that you have quite an interesting tale, even before you were born, about how your family got here. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. My grandmother, my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother had come from Oklahoma in the 18, I can't even remember what they said it was, but it was in the 1800s anyway. She come from Oklahoma.
Kind of the mid-1800s, yeah. I'm guessing, late 1800s.
Yeah, like
back when Oklahoma area was still considered what they called the Indian Nation, I'm guessing, yeah?
Indian Territory.
Indian Territory,
yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So they left, a whole lot of Cheyennes left from Oklahoma, and Doll Knife was one of them.
Now they started, I'm going to interrupt you one more time just to give our viewers a little context. Mm-hmm. They were originally from Montana?
Yes, they were.
And were displaced down to Oklahoma?
Yes.
And that's where we pick up the story with your great-great-grandmother?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so she came with the group that's left Oklahoma to come back to Lame Deer, Montana. So she...
and they left on their own.
Yes,
they were not supposed to leave.
No.
They got tired of Oklahoma, which you can't hardly blame them.
Yeah.
And left to go back home.
Too hot and too dry. Anyway, she come to all the way to Kansas, where the I guess cavalry caught up to them, and they had a shootout and massacred a lot of them that were coming. But she escaped with Doll Knife and his family and some others. There was like 170 some of them that escaped, and most of them got killed there. So that was called Punished Woman's Massacre. And so she made it, when they escaped from there, she made it all the way to what they call Ogallala, Nebraska.
Sure.
And they crossed over the Platte River. And they got that far, and they were looking for Red Cloud. They thought he was still at Fort Robinson, but he wasn't. Red Cloud at the time had been taken to South Dakota to be put on a reservation. All the Indians that were at Fort Robinson at that time, the Sioux. So they took them.
Is that Pine Ridge Reservation that we know today?
Yes.
Pine Ridge and Rosebud combination?
Yes. Anyway, that's where Red Cloud was, but they come, it's just a little south of Chadron is where the cavalry caught them. And there's a marker there too, but they brought them over here to Fort Robinson all the Cheyenne people that was running away from Oklahoma. But anyway, they got up to Fort Robinson here, and they were in there, I don't know, 3-4 months, but it was 1800s, but it was January 9th, and it was very cold. Everybody said it was very cold that year, and they had planned to escape from there, so they
Can I interrupt you for a minute? If I'm not mistaken, while they were at Fort Robinson, they were also deprived of heat and food to force them to go back to Oklahoma. Is that correct?
Well, she said that they did give them food, which was
Okay.
meat and biscuits.
Okay.
So the
Hardtack and
Yeah.
jerky.
Yeah. Yeah. She had escaped out of that building when they all broke out. So she went down towards what they call the Soldier Creek
Yeah.
now.
And they still call it Soldier Creek.
Yeah. Anyway, she followed that to the White River. So I guess that was back this way. And White River, Dawn, him and his family escaped towards the north when they were running out. And she caught up with them, you know, up the river here. And they got, I believe what's his name? Spotted Tail and his camp were up here by Whitney somewhere there. And that's where they all went to, and they were saved. That's how they got saved out of this massacre here. So she went with them all the way into the South Dakota, and they went clear up to Whitney area.
Yeah, sure.
And that's where she lived, and she was a very young girl, but she had, back then they say married, but they lived with, you know, the man that they protected them. Well, he was what they call trader. They have a building where they have a log house where they traded furs and stuff with the Indians for the furs that they brought in.
So did she get married to a European?
He was
okay.
French or French.
Well, there was certainly a lot of French around that area at that time.
Yeah. So he, you know, they lived together, and this is time space there that she had 6 children with him.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and so when they were living there, you know, she was doing well with the kids and stuff. Well, they heard Bigfoot and all of those were coming down from the north, and so also the soldiers, they heard the soldiers were coming after them too. So then the man said, I'm going to take the children and, you know, what stuff we have, he said, and I'm going to go home out east. He said, if you want to come with me, he said, you're welcome to come. But she said, no, I want to stay here with my people, she said.
Sure.
And so.
And your grandmother was one of those kids, yeah?
No, she was the mother of those children.
Okay.
So she stayed there at Wounded Knee area, and they had what they call the ghost dance.
And that's a picture of it.
Yes, that's it. That's what they had there, and she was one of them. But there were some relatives that came and got her out of that ghost dance. But they took her out, her relatives took her out, and they went what they call Wolf Creek Hills. And there's caves there, and the horses could go in the caves too. So they went in, and that's where she got saved out of Wounded Knee massacre too. So she
Double
lived,
jeopardy.
yeah.
Is this her here?
This is her daughter.
Her daughter, okay.
And she had the grandmother that escaped from Oklahoma. She had married another trapper. He was French Canadian. His last name was Lamont, and he was also a trapper. And this one, that's her dad. She had two from this man, this trapper. His last name was Lamont.
And who's the baby?
That's me.
And where is this taken, Angie?
It's in Pine Ridge.
On the reservation?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's my dad. My dad built that.
So that's about 81 years ago.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's where I was born there, but my mother had to go back to the reservation to have children so they could be given numbers, what do they call it, registered?
Registered as a part of the tribe. Yes.
Yeah. So we were all registered there in Pine.
And you have some other pictures here. Is this about from that time period of when you were a little girl?
No, this here is before my time. This
Okay.
is where my great grandmother was with ghost dance at Wounded Knee.
Okay.
And then this is before it happened. They were on horseback and all that before it happened. But when they got word of the soldiers coming, then that's when they all decided to have the ghost dance there. And the Sioux didn't invent this ghost dance. It was by some other tribal member that come into the reservation and started that.
But it certainly must have been something they placed a lot of hope in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at the time, there was disease going around. They were starving, and it was just hard at that time for them to.
Well, there was a variety of treaty violations on the side of the government that put them in a kind of a precarious and life-threatening situation, to say the least.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to minimize any of that, but there was certainly some wrongs being done there, and I can understand something that you would try to reach out for to bring you hope. And the fact that your great-grandmother survived two very, very dangerous situations, one here at Fort Robinson and the outbreak, and the other at Wounded Knee, is remarkable, and certainly a testament to the strength and core of your ancestors.
Yeah. Well, it was three because she come from Oklahoma, and there was one down here in Kansas. So
Yeah,
it
three.
was actually
That's right.
three
Yeah,
that she
yeah.
escaped from. So
Quite a gal.
I know she's pretty strong. The one I always feel bad about is here at Fort Robinson because all she had on was a wool army blanket.
And it was below zero that night.
Yeah, and they said like 30 below.
Yes.
And she didn't have any overshoes, and just moccasins and a lot of snow she had to wade through.
Yes. Well, Linda and I lived up in the Badlands for years, and there's been a couple of times we've been invited to the commemoration of that outbreak. And it seems like every time it's been below zero during that time. It's just a cold week historically. And to think that they were pushed to that is sad and heroic at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, 5-6 years I started going, and I met a lot of Cheyenne ladies that were related to my grandmother, and they didn't know that our family was still here, that we didn't leave. They fought back, and they managed to get into my great grandfathers got into being scouts for the army there at Fort Robinson. But that was after after that happened. But they it was for the pay, and then they got to sleep in barracks, I guess it was. But anyway, my great grandfather was a little big man, and he saw living with the whites and adapting to the way they, their clothing and their jackets and all of that, and the warmth of the building and the food that they ate. He just more or less went with it too.
Absolutely.
You know, he was a
Understandably so.
scout there, yeah.
Yep.
And so her husband too, was Black Horse, and he did the same thing. He was a scout, and he got a pension from there. And so they always had, in the 1920s, I guess, whenever the cars were invented, they had a car. And of course, he didn't drive, but a younger man drove for them, so they would go back to Oklahoma.
And that's
Back and forth, yeah. That's where my mother was born.
You know, we've been talking with Angie here this afternoon, and what a marvelous tale that she tells of a family with a lot of strength and a lot of character for sure. This episode's been brought to you by the Harrison House in Harrison, and we invite you to give them a call whenever you're in that area. I'm going to give you that phone number. It's 308-665-5199, and you give them a call, and thanks. And this is Mike with Never Let the Truth Get in the Way of a Good Story, and we'll see you down the trail.